half this country. Conservatives do it too, but not nearly as much. Look, whoever's doing it, it's got to stop, because we're at a point now where politics has broken up more families than letting your wife see your phone. Can we please try to remember, especially at this time of year, that most people don't decide their politics. They inherit them. It's about where you grew up in America, what your parents taught you, your life experiences, your religion. Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia was here recently, and I was amazed by the number of people who reached out after the show to say, wow, I kind of like her. Yeah, that's been my line for a while. Everyone's a monster till you talk to them.
You know what's wild? The fact that politics in 2026 has managed to do what cheating, money problems, and in-laws combined couldn't do, tear families apart. Seriously, more families have been broken up by politics than by someone leaving their phone face up on the dinner table. And Bill Maher, of all people, just called it out. Not from a partisan angle, but from a basic sanity check. He's tired of liberals ghosting half the country. Conservatives do it too, sure, but Maher says it's nowhere near the same level. Because at this point, the political divide isn't just about disagreeing on tax rates or healthcare. It's personal, emotional, and, in some cases, downright tribal. And before we go any further, do me a favor. If you're into honest political commentary without the corporate filter, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps this channel keep cutting through the noise. Now, let's talk about what Maher actually said and why it hit such a nerve. He pointed out something that's become painfully obvious. Liberals have split into two groups. One group still believes in conversation. They want to keep talking, keep engaging, keep debating. The other group has gone with what's now being called no contact, as in delete the number, block family, ghost your uncle, and pretend your mom doesn't exist if she voted red. That's not a joke. Go no contact is now political advice. Maher compared it to Scientologists cutting off so-called suppressive people, except this time, it's over who someone voted for.
On the liberal side, there's two camps now. We need to keep talking to people wing, and the go no contact wing. That's what they call it now, go no contact. This belief that Trump voters, even if it's your own parents, are too deplorable for human contact and must be cut off. You know, like Scientologists do to suppressive people.
And you know what? He's not wrong. We've seen this play out everywhere, from family dinners to dating apps. Remember when Jimmy Kimmel's wife, Molly McErney, bragged about sending her relatives letters telling them not to vote for Trump? And then she cut off the ones who didn't comply. She bragged about it like it was an act of moral courage, and no one in her social circle batted an eye because somehow alienating family has become.
Mr. Litt asked the question, what has all this vanishing accomplished? Oh, I know. A second helping of MAGA, that's what. Molly McNerney, Jimmy Kimmel's wife and head writer, went public on this topic recently, so I feel it's fair to comment respectfully in public. She says she's lost relationships with relatives because she wrote them an email before the election with 10 reasons why they shouldn't vote for Trump. And some still didn't obey. So, you know.
But here's where it gets really absurd. Even liberals who dare to talk to conservatives now risk being shunned. A former Obama speechwriter, David Litt, wrote an article this year titled, "Is it time to stop snubbing your white right-wing family?" Seems innocent enough, right? Just a guy admitting maybe ghosting grandma wasn't the solution. But nope. He got piled on by the woke mob for daring to suggest that speaking to relatives might not be treason. And Maher absolutely torched that mindset. He said, look, if your ideas are so fragile that you can't even have a conversation without fear of contamination, maybe you don't really believe in them as much as you think you do. Because a movement that's confident in its ideas doesn't hide from debate. It seeks it out.
A former speechwriter for Obama named David Litt wrote an op-ed this year called, "Is it time to stop snubbing your white right-wing family?" where he admitted he'd had a change of heart and that was the wrong approach. So, of course, then the woke wing tried to banish him for breaking ranks on their policy of hating people who don't agree with you on everything. Because what fun is life if you're not cutting somebody off?
Think about that. If the left really believed its worldview was superior, it wouldn't be afraid to engage. It would be like, sure, let's talk. Let's prove it. But instead, what's happening? People are being told to block, cancel, and exile anyone who dares to disagree. And honestly, that's insecurity disguised as morality, because silencing voices doesn't win arguments, it just proves you're afraid to make them. Maher even brought up the Kimmel story again, pointing out how absurd it is to send people an ultimatum about how to vote. Ultimatums don't make people change their politics. They make people rethink you. Like, imagine someone handing you a list of 10 reasons to think differently, and if you don't agree, they'll cut you off. That's not persuasion. That's blackmail with a side of self-righteousness. Maher flipped the script perfectly. He said, you know what would have been a better exercise? Write 10 reasons why 77 million Americans didn't trust you with power. Oof, that line hit harder than most campaign ads. Because at the end of the day, he's right. The left didn't lose because America suddenly went crazy. They lost because they stopped listening. Instead of asking why people were.
10 reasons. I can think of 100. But I would never present it to someone as an ultimatum. Ultimatums don't make people rethink their politics. They make them rethink you. So, somewhere along the way, my values became code for I'm the only one with a moral compass. You know what would have been a better exercise? Write a top 10 list to yourself, where you try to imagine 10 reasons why 77 million Americans didn't want to trust you with taking power. And I say that as someone who votes Democratic, as I like to remind my very pure friends, we voted for the same person. You're just like we lost.
But here's the part that might be the most profound. Maher reminded everyone that most people don't even choose their politics. They inherit them. It's shaped by where you grew up, your parents, your faith, and your experiences. We're all products of our environments to some extent. So cutting people off for that is like disowning someone for their accent. It's absurd. And he had this perfect line, everyone's a monster till you talk to them. That's it. That's the thesis.
Can we please try to remember, especially at this time of year, that most people don't decide their politics. They inherit them. It's about where you grew up in America, what your parents taught you, your life experiences, your religion. Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia was here recently, and I was amazed by the number of people who reached out after the show to say, wow, I kind of like her. Yeah, that's been my line for a while. Everyone's a monster till you talk to them.
But Maher recently sat down with Trump, and people lost their minds. Larry David, yes, that Larry David, publicly scolded him for it. Liberals online called it a betrayal. But Maher didn't suddenly become a Trump fan. He just did the unthinkable. He talked to him. And that's the point. Conversation doesn't equal endorsement. It's not surrendering your values. It's how adults engage in a democracy. Maher even admitted that talking to Trump forced him to rethink a few of his assumptions. Not change sides, not convert, just reconsider. That's what thinking people do. They adjust their views when new information appears. And Maher's honesty about that drove people crazy because, in the current culture, self-reflection is treated as weakness. Once you've chosen your team, you're supposed to stick with it. No nuance, no conversation, no curiosity. But Maher keeps proving that curiosity is a strength because when you actually talk to people, the caricatures melt away. The myths collapse. Reality finally has a chance to breathe. And he's not afraid to admit when both sides get weird. Like when Marjorie Taylor Greene told him she believes UFOs might be demons. Maher straight up said, "That's nuts." But then he immediately added, so is this. Is that a boy or a girl? I can't tell by it.
I quoted people in our own Defense Department who had said, well, hold on, what you think might be aliens actually could be fallen angels or demons. Marjorie agreed, saying, absolutely. She said, I'm a Christian conservative, angels and demons, that's what we believe. Okay, I think that's nuts. But you know what? So is this a girl or a boy? I can't tell by its...
And honestly, that's the balance we need, calling out the crazy wherever it shows up, left, right, or center. Maher's larger message is that the left doesn't have a monopoly on intelligence or morality. They've just convinced themselves they do. But that's not wisdom. That's arrogance. And arrogance is the enemy of progress because when you assume you're automatically smarter or more virtuous than everyone else, you stop questioning your own beliefs. You stop growing. You stop listening, and politics becomes less about solving problems and more about performing righteousness. That's exactly what Maher calls the sugar rush of moral superiority, that instant gratification you get from declaring yourself more enlightened than everyone else, even if it means learning nothing in the process. And that's why he said what might be the most devastating line of his entire rant, "You are not serious people." That one landed like a sledgehammer. Because really, is ghosting half the country a strategy? Is refusing to talk to the president supposed to be heroic? Maher compared it to high school politics. Telling the guy with all the power he can't sit at your lunch table isn't activism. It's immaturity dressed up as virtue. The irony is that the people refusing to engage are often the loudest critics. Larry David said he's not smart enough about politics to go on Maher's show, but somehow felt smart enough to publicly shame him for having dinner with Trump. That's the kind of contradiction Maher's been mocking for years. You can't avoid debate and still pretend to hold the moral high ground.